And before going to the different types, before going to discuss about the different types, first we understand about the definition of data type. Like in general, data types are the classifications of the different data items. Generally, data type represents a kind of value that tells what operations can be performed on a given set of particular data. By basic on this basic definition, we are going to move about the different data types in Python. And yes, there are mainly four data types in Python: integers, float, string, and boolean or logical. Coming to the integers part, it contains it contains positive or negative whole numbers. In Python, there will be no limit to how long an integer value can be. And coming to the float, a float is a real number with a floating point representation, and it is specified by the decimal point. And coming to the string, in Python, strings are arrays of bytes which represents Unicode characters. A string is a location of one or more characters put in a single quote or double quote or triple quote. And individual characters of a string can be accessed by using the method of indexing. And indexing allows negative addresses references to access the characters from the back of the string. And in further classes, we are going to learn about the indexing. Right now, we are not talking about the indexing point. And I would like to add one point here. In Python, there is no character data type. A character in a string of length 1, it is represented by str class. And while using string, we can use single double quotes to represent strings, and multi-line strings can be denoted by using the triple quotes. And let me show you an example about the strings. So in yesterday's class, already Kalyan said about this Jupyter notebook, right? And now we see how the string operations can be performed in Jupyter notebook. Let us consider a value. And strings are collection of alphabets and words and other characters. In Python, you can create strings by enclosing a sequence of characters within a pair of singular double quotes. And you can also apply the addition operations on two or more strings to concatenate them. Like and in this way, you can apply the addition operations on two or more strings, and the basic operations that you can perform with strings. For example, You can use a multiplication symbol to repeat a string to a certain number of times. This is how we can repeat a string for n number of times, and you can also slice strings, which means that you can select pairs of strings. Let me show you that too. This is the above slicing is called range slicing. Here I represented range, that is 2, and we can do also the slicing. This is called range slicing, and we can also perform the slicing part. The above shown is about the slicing part, and we have to remember that strings can also be alphanumeric characters, but the plus operation symbol still is used to concatenate the strings. And Python has many built-in methods or helper functions to manipulate the strings, replacing a substring and capitalizing certain words in a paragraph, finding the position of a string within another string, are some common string manipulations. And we can also retrieve the length of the string in characters. Note that specific phrases also count towards the final result. Like I will show one example here. Here in this length, it's also counted the space values also. So for that reason, it gives the value of 8. And we can also check whether a string consists of only digits. For that, we have to write one code, right? Here in the output we will get false because there is no digit numeric values in str1, so it will give the value of s. And replace parts of strings with other strings can also be done within the string operations. After string, the another part of data type is the another type of data type is boolean, and data types with one of the two in built-in values, like it will tell only either true or false. And let me show you an example about the boolean. Yes, this is how we can check the boolean function. Like 4 is not so great for 4 is not greater than 10. So it when we are printing a function, it will give automatically false. So this is how we can do the perform on boolean. Now let us go for the data structures in Python. In general, data structures are a way of organizing and storing the data. Because of that, they can be accessed and worked with efficiently. And the type of data structures in Python will be are list, tuple, set, and dictionary. Coming to the list, a list is a sequence of homogeneous and heterogeneous elements where elements need not to be unique in list, and list is also mutable and iterable, and list of values are specified in square braces, and list index starts at 0. Here homogeneous means similar data type with order, and elements in the list is not to be unique. In list you can have repeated elements, and list is mutable, we can add or delete the elements, and it is also be iterable. Here iterable means doing same operations on a set of given elements, and we all know in Python the index will always starts from 0, and in the case of list also the index will always starts from 0 only. And let us perform the list operations in Jupyter Notebook. So here what I am trying to do is I am trying to add the 11 to the list number, and list with we can add the 11 number to the list with append function. By default this number will be added to the end of the list, and like try that. Here we can see that I added the number 11 to the list number, where by using the append function. By default the number will be added to the end of the list, and if we don't want to add the number 11 to the end of the list, we can use insert function for that. In this way we can add any number to the list. If we want to add the number in a certain position, we can use the insert, and if we want to add the number at the last position, we use append function. We can also remove the first occurrence of wo from the list character with the help of remove function. Here we can see one row is eliminated from the list character, and list, yes, if we want to remove a certain position by using index number, we can remove the certain position from the list character. This code removes the item at a specified position. This is how we can do the remove the from the particular index by using indexing. And now we can go for in place sorting. This is how we can sort this type of sorting is called in place sorting. By using this sorting, we can arrange from we can arrange the numbers in an order, and we can reverse also. We can perform the reverse also in the case of list. Yeah, this is how we can reverse the code, reverse the list, and let's go for the tuple. And for a tuple, it is a unique set of elements, and tuples are immutable. We cannot change like in adding or removing an element, yeah, adding or removing the number also. In list, list is a mutable one. We can add or delete the number, but in tuple, it is a mutable, and tuple is iterable, and values can be specified by using normal braces. And similarly, as like a list, tuple is also index starts will also starts at 0. Let me show you an example about the tuple. Yeah, this is how we can write about the tuple, similar like the list, but we are used. And if we can, here we cannot change the value inside a tuple. Let me show you that. If I try to change the value inside a tuple, it will throw you an error because tuples are uh, it, list is mutable, but tuples are immutable. Because of that reason, it is not allowed to do the manipulations like adding or deleting the rows or deleting the numbers. See, when I try to add a number into the tuple, it will showing me error because of that because as I said earlier, tuple is an immutable one, so we cannot add or delete the numbers inside a tuple. When we are going through a huge data set, tuples can be useful. Mainly we useful for that reason. And let me show you another example. So after tuple, the another data type is set, and is set is a collection of unique items and not in a particular order. In the case of set, it does not maintain any particular order, and it is an unordered collection. And this set can be useful to create lists that only hold a unique values in the data set. And element wise is mutable, but the set is the mutable one. Element wise is unmutable, but set is the mutable one. And creation of set, we use flower brackets, and sets mainly support operations like union, intersection, and difference. Let me show you a simple example on set. Now if we see, while I am printing the x of set, x underscore set, it does not maintaining a certain order. And while if any repeating characters are there, it will only take only one, and doesn't consider the repeated values. And in the case of set, it doesn't follow any particular order also. And we can also print all the elements in X set but not in Y set. For that, one simple code is there. Like, yes, because of that, all the elements in the X set will be printed, but not in the Y set. And uh, if we want to print the unique elements in X set or Y set or both, for that the code is by running this code, we can identify the unique elements in both X set and Y set. And if we want to print the elements in both X set and Y set, and here we can see that it is printed the elements in both X set and Y set. And these are the basic data structures in Python. And And in general, these data structures like list, tuple, set, and dictionary doesn't support the basic data manipulations and data preparation operations like subsetting and aggregating, because Python is originally not built for data analysis. For to perform the data manipulations and data preparation, the data structures of pandas makes Python suitable for data analysis. So let's look about the data structures in pandas. So yes, coming to the data structures of in pandas, the data structures of pandas make Python suitable for data analysis, like for data manipulation and data handling. And the three types of the mainly there are three types of data structures in pandas. There are series, data frame, and panel data. In, in the case of series is a one-dimensional, that is only one column, and series should be homogeneous. And in the case of series, repetition is allowed. We can create series by using list, and values of the data can be mutable, and the size is immutable. And in the case of data frame, it is a two-dimensional data structures, which means we can use both for rows and columns. And in pandas, axis 0 stands for the rows and axis 1 stands for the column. And the size and data of a data frame is mutable. And coming to the panel data, a panel is a three-dimensional data structures with heterogeneous data. It is hard to represent the panel in graphic representation, and panel can be illustrated as a container of data frame. Let's look at these three data structures in pandas by using Jupyter library, Jupyter notebook.
Bro, also show them what are libraries and how to use them.
Yeah, I will show them.
How to import libraries and how to connect those with shortcuts.
Yeah, coming to this, for now we need pandas library and numpy library, and I am trying to import both of them right now. This is how we can import the pandas and the numpy library in Jupyter Notebook. We use other libraries also like scikit-learn and Seaborn, but while we are studying the basic data types and data structures, we mainly focus on pandas and numpy. So let's look at about the data frame. For to create the data frame, let us first create a list. After creating a list, we can convert into it a data frame. Here we can see I created a list. Now I am trying to convert the list into a data frame. So here we see that this will be the syntax for converting a list into a data frame, and here we can see after converting the data frame, it is showing that pandas.core.frame data frame. By using the pandas library, we convert the list into a data frame, and if we can clearly observe here, we don't have the column names, and let us put the column names also. This is how we can add the columns names by using this syntax. We can add the columns names, and suppose if we want to give the names for the rows, then the following syntax has to be implemented. So this is how we can add the column names and row names for the for a data frame, and using dictionary for creation of the data frame. And by using the dictionary for creation of the data frame, first let us to create a dictionary. So we have to use the flower brackets for a dictionary. Here I created one dictionary. Now I am trying to convert the about dictionary into a data frame. And by using this syntax, we can convert the dictionary into a pandas.code.frame data frame. I mean, this is how we can do the conversion from the by using dictionaries, or by using the converting a list into a data frames. And so yes, that's all from my side. If you have any doubt, please ping me a message in the group. And thank you. Over to you, Gokul.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, Anudeep, for good session. I hope everyone is online and not sleeping. Is everyone online? Hello?
Yes, Gokul.
Yay. Okay. Is my screen sharing?
Yes.
Are you able to see my PPT?
No, Gokul, we are not unable to see your PPT, what you're showing.
What is it showing right now?
It
Nothing.
is just showing Anudeep.
Okay, 1 second.
Go to share screen and switch window.
Yeah. I thought I'm sharing desktop, but yeah. Now I think PPT is visible.
Yes.
Yes, Gokul.
Yeah. Okay. Today I'm going to talk about a little about supervised machine learning. I think you guys heard a few last 2 sessions about machine learning. Am I audible? Loud and clear, or should I have to shout a little more?
It's clear, Gokul. You can go on.
Yeah. Okay. So in the previous sessions, I think you learned about what is machine learning and the basics, like how the machine learning works. Could someone please explain, like, tell me, like, what you learned in the last 2 sessions? Like, what is machine learning? Did you heard about the different types of machine learning? Can anyone just say about it? Aparna, would you like to?
Yeah, Gokul, I have learned what is meant by machine learning and how it is useful in marketing segregated areas, and how it is segregated in different areas, and also how this machine language is predicted and predicted useful for prediction of future, and then how to type in Jupyter, how to use the Jupyter or now itself Panda, and methodologies, whatever Varun said, and Kalyan spoke about Python and all that.
Nice. So you learned about the basic stuff, the basic requirements to go more about machine learning. So today I'm going to tell a little about supervised machine learning methods, like why we call this supervised. Before telling this, I need to explain you there are like three types of machine learning algorithms. Okay. First one is supervised, unsupervised, and the third one is reinforced. Okay. So in supervised machine learning, it's simple, like a teacher teaching us. In a class, if we take a student is learning from a teacher or a mentor, it is called a supervised. It is called a supervised training. And if the same person is not having any mentor or teacher, but he is learning himself, maybe through online or whatever, then it is called unsupervised learning. Then what is reinforced? Reinforced is nothing but adding the value on. Like for suppose if I am learning some kind of SQL for suppose, and I am after learning SQL, I want to strengthen it up by doing some other certifications in the SQL. This will be a reinforced method. So similarly, in the machines also have these three types of learning techniques. So what happens is in supervised machine learning, we will be taking care like what the machine should understand when we give the data. See, in machine learning, it is not like we give a model and the machine predicts. No, it doesn't happen that way. In machine learning, we give the data, the machine itself creates a model, and we use that model to on the other data sets, like outside of it, outside of the training environment, and find out how good the model is working, or also how could it be helpful for predicting the future requirements or not. So in supervised machine learning, the algorithm will be having like the training process. In the right side, if you can see here, I have clearly explained. It clearly states the input. When we give input, the training happens, and then it gives outputs. But the inputs and outputs are not two different things here. Okay. Many might think input means independent variables and output means dependent variables. No. In the supervised machine, so it's not just supervised, but also in machine learning, we are giving both independent variables and dependent variables as inputs, and the output will be model, and we will be using this model to predict our future requirements or some other things. So what happens in the between training, how the machine is being trained in a supervised machine learning. In supervised machine learning, they will just like in other machine learnings, we will be splitting the data into two parts. First, why we will split the data? Because we don't have a right data to test the model after generating it. Let's say if I have 100 observations in my data set, and I'm using all the 100 observations to create a model. After creating the model, where should I test it on? I don't have any other confirmed data set to test it on. That is why I'm splitting my data, which I'm already having, into two different parts. One part I will be using for training, and the other part I will be using for testing. By doing this, it is called cross validation. By doing this, we can understand how good our model can be used, how good our model is performing, or how good the machine learning, like the training happened to generate that model, and how good it is working. So to do this, when we split the data, usually many people split the data, many experts will split the data into either 80:20 or 70:30. nothing but 80% training data set, and here it will be 20% test data set. And there are other like many types of splitting as well. It is not just 80/30. 80/30 is nothing but it's a holdout method, and there are other methods like k-fold splitting and other one leave out one method. And in those methods we will be splitting the data sets into different parts, and each part can be a test data set for each, and like each part can be a test data set for other training sets, and we will be creating more than one model there, and we'll be identifying which model is better suited for predicting. And it's not just in the in the machine learning, but also in other models as well. If you go to unsupervised techniques or even other model generations, you never go with one model in mind. You might have one model which can be helpful, but you always use more than one, and you always compare them to find out the best one with less error in it. So similarly in the machine learning as well, we'll be splitting the data set and then creating a model on the trained data set. First will be the inputs will be both independent variables and dependent variable. Why I am telling both independent and dependent? Because you need to label them. You need to mention which is going to be the dependent variable and which is going to be the independent variable in the data set. That is a must for machine learning methods in supervised machine learning. In unsupervised, you don't need to label it. You just need to give the data. You don't need to say which is which. The system itself need to understand which is which. But here in supervised machine learning, you will be telling that this column is the dependent variable, and this column needs to be predicted with the help of other columns, other variables. So that is how supervised machine learning works. And after creating this logic is nothing but a model. We will be getting a model after training, and this model will be again sent with some other. This model will be sent in with the unused data set, like this is for use for training, right? After training, the remaining data set which is used for test, we'll put that into test here. In the test data set, we will always remove the dependent variable first, and then give the only independent variables, and then test the output with and compare the output with the dependent variable. And likewise, we can understand like how accurate it is being predicted, like the model is helping to predict the dependent variable. Then we can understand whether we can use this for real life purpose or not. So the basic is this. Coming to in depth, in supervised machine learning as well, there are again two different subfields. One is classification and other is regression. What is difference is nothing but classification is a discrete. If you know discrete numbers, nothing but 1, 2, 3, like that, 0, 1, 2, 3. Means here there will be no decimal values ever. Such type of data, maybe it's not just 0, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2 is just I'm labeling it. It can be anything, maybe categorical data. It can be numerical but discrete, also categorical, and also we can say nominal data. Like for suppose you can say male and female. Male and female cannot be an order data. It is a categorical data, but it is not an ordinal data, but it is nominal. Even this can be labeled as 0, 1, and we can just use the classification methods to apply to create a model using whatever the techniques we want to use. So this is classification. And in regression, what happens is there will be a dependent variable which we need to predict, but the dependent variable will be a continuous dependent variable. Like for suppose 1.2, 1.5, like that. The number can be anything between decimals as well. So always for a continuous dependent variable, we always go with regression models, regression techniques, and for other categorical or other techniques, we go for classification. But let me give you two examples. Like for suppose in classification, we can give a best example is the mail in our Gmail. We can see whenever we receive a spam mail, it is automatically moved to the spam folder. how this feature works is nothing but there are some free preset models which are generated by Google and kept in the servers, which will be understanding like which are the mails we are not being opening, or which are the mails we are rejecting, or which are the mails we label them as spam previously, and it understands from that data, and it tries to move the same. It tries to predict with the data which is sent in the mail, and it tries to say whether it is a spam or not spam. And if it is putting into the spam, and let's say you go to your spam folder and you see there are 10 mails which doesn't need to be a spam mail, but it is moved to a spam, and then you click on no, send this back to the like the inbox, and if you click on that, the system will automatically understand it will read the content, like it will understand the content which is sent in that mail, and it understand, okay, this is what it is relevant to you, so for you this mail shouldn't be a spam mail, maybe for other people it can be a spam mail, for you it shouldn't, so it again personalize this for the for your requirement, and whenever such a mail comes to you from other person, it will not put it in the spam box. So similarly, let's say you are getting some mails which are spam mails, it is showing in your inbox, and you click on no, this is a spam. Automatically what happens is it again learns, okay, this mail needs to be a spam, so such mail whenever it comes from again from another company or maybe from another sender, it will automatically send to the spam folder. See, that's how classification works. Here the classification happening between spam or not spam. So we can say 0 is spam or 1 is not spam, or vice versa. We can put anything. So the classification example can be the spam or not spam, and the regression we can say a small example like for suppose predicting the price of a house. For suppose let's say you have a data set with a location, and you have a size, length and breadth of the house, like for suppose like the area of the house, let's say. So you have the area of the house, you have the location where it is being located, and you also have the prices in it. For suppose something located in the city center, it will be obviously be high priced, and such something located outside outskirts of the city, it will be low priced. And the price will be obviously in numbers, and it can be continuous, because we don't want the price cannot be a discrete number. It can be, but it is continuous. You can always have penny values as well. So what happens is in regression, the dependent variable will be continuous, so you can use the regression techniques. Maybe you can use linear regression or maybe multivariate regression. So these type of regressions can be used to like predict the continuous variables. Coming to the main difference, like as I already mentioned, see the classification table, it is having 1 zeros here, and the regression is having continuous numbers. Here these two are different examples. In the classification, here we are understanding whether a person is purchasing something or not with respect to their gender, age and salary. And here in regression, we are understanding the speed of wind with respect to temperature, pressure, relative humidity and wind direction. These can be useful to predict, like for suppose in this data set which is used in the regression, this can be used to predict the future weather forecastings. And this can be used in the marketing, where whether the customer is buying a specific product or not with respect to their demographics. Coming to the challenges, like for suppose how to use what are the challenges we will be facing when we use supervised machine learning methods. Because whenever we are using some supervised machine learning methods, we need to have an accurate data set prior, which is already having an accurate data. For suppose if we say there is some data set, let's say for suppose here in the classification, the model what we have here, what are the differentiation between 0 and 1 what we have. Let's say if all the data set needs to have 0 and 1, but some values are showing 2 and 3. That data is not the relevant data for this data set. It shouldn't be 2 or 3. It should lie between 0 and 1. So such data situations needs to be avoided. So prior doing the supervised machine learning, we need to do the data cleaning. We need to understand how the data is, what are the values it contains. Let's say if we have a dependent variable, what are the values it is having in it? What are the if it is categorical variable, what are the value counts of each categorical variable in it? And also what are the other elements having, like for suppose if the independent variables, there shouldn't be any missing values. Let's say if there is missing value here, or here some other variables, it is taking off, or otherwise they are having some outliers, they will be pulling off the data aside. So these kind of situations needs to be handled prior to start the supervised machine learning. It's not just supervised but also in other models as well. If you are having missing values and outliers or some other issues with the data which you are not taking care prior, it will affect your model. And also there is one more thing called as feature. Nothing but feature is nothing but a column. A column it is also called as a if I am right, wait. Column is also which is taking temperature, pressure, wind direction, and relative humidity. Let's suppose relative humidity is not required to predict the wind speed. Let's say it is not a factor of it. So if we are using such a feature to predict the wind speed, it is going to affect our model, and it will not be our model will not be more accurate. To do so, we always need to test. Actually, we don't know which if we don't know which feature is the correct fit for the model to use in a model, we can never understand whether the model is an accurate or not. Though it may show with our test after creating a model, we will be testing it on the other data set. Though it is able to give a 99% accuracy, we can never say that that model can be a good model to use for the future predictions, because we are using some irrelevant features in it. So how to understand which features we need to use and which features we cannot use? This can only be done. This can only be known from an expert. Let's say these details: temperature, pressure, relative humidity, and wind direction. These are used for weather forecasting. So some expert who is good at understanding the weather conditions, who is working in some weather forecasting departments, he can be able to tell you which are the accurate features which you need to use. Let's say for suppose a marketing expert can say you which variables needs to be used as a feature for understanding whether a person is going to become a customer or not. If you find out a lead, if you find out some demographic information about him, which demographic information you need to include as a feature to able to use it to create a model which will help predicting whether he will become a customer, whether he will be converting into a customer or not. So such an expertise will always come with experience, and also we can find it in documentation. Maybe if you find out other research articles, or maybe you can find it out from other, let's say, research articles, and some other documentation, maybe in textbooks. So this is where you will find which features are important to be used in which prediction models. So that is compulsory in the mind. You need to keep in mind. Always reach to an expert before finalizing a feature, like which features to include as a factors. That is one, as I mentioned, irrelevant input features presenting in the training data could give you inaccurate results. And also data preparation and pre-processing is always an important thing. We should never miss it. If you miss it, the whole process is going to be a failure, because you will not get an accurate model to help you predict in the future. And yeah, as I said here, see, concerned expert is not available, then the other approach is brute force. Brute force is nothing but we will be testing it with different variables. let's say if I don't know, if I don't have an expert in this field of this weather forecasting or weather field, if I don't have an expert with me, but I need to create a model to test to predict the weather, this wind speed, then what can I do? The other approach which I can do is trying with different models. Let's say one model I will use all four, the other model I will use only these three, maybe other these three. So similarly, I will use different features in it and different variables in it, and I will find out different models. After getting all these models, I will be testing these models on the test data set, and I will see which model is predicting better, and also which model is explaining. There is one factor, one thing in regression. If say we'll have an R square value, this R square value indicates like how independent variables are explaining, how accurately the independent variables are explaining the dependent variable. This can be understood by the R square. So the different models when we generate, we will be testing on the testing data set and also summarizing them to see their R square values and which is having a highest R square with better predictability. We'll use that model for the predictions. That is the second approach. And what are the best practices? As I mentioned, we need to decide which kind of data is to be used in the training data set, and we need to decide the structure and learning function of the learning algorithm. And comes to structure and learning function, if when I say supervised machine learning model, obviously we need to give some it's not just labeling data and just giving the data input. We also need to give the system which model it needs to apply on, like which model it needs to create, which kind of model it needs to create. So to that we need to give a structure for it. So I will show you an example in the next classes when we start each algorithm in depth, like understanding which algorithm and how to use that algorithm with all the coding and stuff, and how it can be used on a data set and what all the variables it is having in it to test or to differentiate how different it is from other models. That is one thing. And coming to a small explanation about like what are the different supervised models you can find on. Here are the few few types. First one is support vector machines and logical linear regression, logistic regression. These are all the different types. I will tell you one small line about each and everything, and if possible, I'll show a small diagram as well. And in support vector machines, it is nothing but we are creating a vectors. If you know the concept of vectors, if you know this is the x and y plane, x and y coordinate system, and if we draw some line, this is called y, this is called x. So this vector will be having some position to it. So this position is understood by the vector. So it is created with the vector. You don't need to learn all this stuff like how the vectors are created and how the vector will be different from another vector. It's nothing but a position, the distance and the angle. Actually, it's the distance and the angle. So it is defined with that. But this is a small example of 2 dimension, but it can also happen in multiple dimensions as well, more than 3 as well. So the support vector machine helps the machine to create this algorithm. This algorithm will be what it will do is it will plot the data. It will plot all the data which you give, and it will try to draw vectors between those plotted variables in n dimensions which you give. Like for suppose if I have three input variables, 3 independent variables, then it will be having 3-dimensional vector machine. Let's say if I have 4 independent variables when I give, so it will having 4 dimension. So similarly, n number of input variables we give, that many dimensions it will create, and we can not even visualize such stuff in real life, but it is all calculations, purely mathematical. So all it will be help to create a model, and this model which you can go on and test. So that is how support vector machine works. And coming to linear regression is nothing but if you have it will just plot the scatter plot the data, and it will try to fit a line in it. So it is linear regression. Coming to logistic regression, in logistic regression, logistic is usually a categorical regression, categorical variable. It is predicting a categorical variable. To predict a categorical variable, let's say in binary, for an example, I will show a sigmoid function in the binary. In the binary, if you say there will be, let's say 0 and 1, so obviously the data points will be either 0 or 1. So when we are predicting, trying to fit a line in this, a linear regression is not an accurate fit because you cannot extend it and you cannot try to predict what is going to happen in future. Your prediction needs to happen in the 0-1 range itself. So for such a thing, there is some function called a sigmoid function. The sigmoid function is nothing but it looks like an S, an inverted S. What happens, this is it is creating a linear function here and here, and it is trying to join them with a differentiation. So what happens is whenever you are using this model, it will directly predict either it is 0 or 1 with respect to, let's say it usually takes, what happens is 0 to 0.5. What happens is it will take a lower boundary as 0, and if it gives more than that, it takes as 1. But to also differentiate such kind of stuff, we use a sigmoid function, and this function, you don't need to write any functions for this. It is already predefined in the logistic regression. All you need to do is mention we need to use this logistic regression in this algorithm so that we can create a model using logistic regression. That is how we supervise an algorithm, supervise a machine learning algorithm. And coming to Naive Bayes is nothing but it uses Bayes probability equation. When the time comes, I will even explain like how the Bayes transformation works, or this Bayes probability, how it came into prominence and how it is being used a lot right now in the machine learning algorithms. And in decision trees, another thing in decision trees is nothing but it is like a tree, Christmas tree. If you know, this is kind of a Christmas tree if you can take. So nothing but it is trying to split the data into two different subsets, 2 or more. It's not just compulsory 2. Mostly it will obviously always try to split each and every variable into 2. So, and again here again it compares another variable or maybe the same variable into 2, again 2 different subsets, a part of it, and again into 2 different subsets. So this is how the decision tree works. And coming to this k-nearest neighbor algorithm, here in the k-nearest neighbor, we are having a radius. Like for suppose if I am having, let's say this is some data point, and we will be giving a k. The value of k will be the range. Let's say for suppose if I say k value, for suppose I have 3, and I'm having, these are the data points. Let's say when we are having these data points, what happens is when I say 3, from any data point, it tries to log in, it tries to club with 3 other data points in its radius. So when it tries to do that, if in the other 3, whatever the 3 data points there are, let's say we are predicting a categorical variable, either spam or not. Okay. And in the spam or not spam, we have spam as 0 and not spam as 1. And these 3 data points which are in the radius of this unpredicted value, if these 3 data points are showing as 1, then obviously the value of this, the system will understand, okay, this needs to be 1. Let's say if these 3 data points are 1, 1, 0, like 2 of them are 1s and other one is 0, and again system will understand, okay, majority is being 1, so it needs to be 1. So how many variables it consider is what the k. If we give k as more number, it will try to consider more values. If we give k value less, it will try to consider less values, the closest variables which are there among it. And how it understand which is close, there is also another technique called the distance. It will check the distance between the variables which is close and takes the first three variables. If when we give 3, it will take the first 3, the least distance which is it's having from the center, like the data point which we need to find out. So this is the k-nearest algorithm, and there is also one more thing called as k-means. In the k-mean algorithm, we will be having actually a mean. It is nothing but a mean value. What happens is, let's say if I have a I don't know. Let me clear this stuff 1 second. Yeah. So there is one more thing as k-means. In the k-means algorithm, what happens is you will be having a data points which are let's say in the data points, let's say I have a categorical data set, let's say for suppose iris. In iris data set, we know there are 3 categorical variables output in the dependent variable. So in 3 categorical variables, let's say 1, 2, 3, and these 3 categorical variables needs to be plotted. So what happens is, let's say it tries to plot all the 1, 2, and all the 3 data sets. It tries to plot with differentiation. When this how this happens is it is completely done by the system. You don't need to separate like from where I need to draw a plot. No, you are not going to draw a plot. The system is trying to draw a plot, and it is trying to fit the data into this plot. Like how many variables, if I try to split it on, we can get an accurate value. That's how the system thinks. So when the system tries to split the values into different groups, it will attain a plot, and using this plot, when you use the model in the other like the other untrained data set, the test data set, or maybe untrained, or maybe if we are using it for prediction, whenever a new data point comes, it will try to see if the data point where it is and which it is close. Let's say if the data point is somewhere here, then obviously it will see that okay, it is in this third region, number 3. So this region belongs to this mean. So the mean of this region is nothing but the 3. So we will say the third category in the iris variable is the answer out as an output. That's how the k-means algorithm works. I think I'm able to explain. If you have any questions, please ask me. I'm pretty sure a lot of you will be having many questions. Hello? Okay, if you don't have any questions, Kalyan, could you please continue with your topic?
Yeah, definitely, Gokul.
Yeah. Tell me.
Are you not providing the Python code for all these algorithms?
We'll be teaching you all these algorithms in the next few sessions. This is just an starting basic, like what is supervised machine learning and how the stuff happens in it. Actually, each and every algorithm will take each session separately, because each algorithm is not just one line code, right? We need to first understand the data. We need to understand which model which we can apply on it, and then we need to apply that model, and we need to test it again. We need to make the changes in the model so that like we need to make the changes in the data so that the accurate model can be driven, and after that we can go for predictions. So all these process will be same for each and every algorithm. So this process will be continued by us in the next sessions. In the next session, we'll teach you 2 or 3 models, and then the other session will teach another 2 3 models. Like that will continue. Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, Kalyan, continue.
Thank you. Gopal. Okay. Good afternoon, friends. Let us continue the session. So, in previous sessions, I have told you about there are some outliers and missing values in the data which are need to be cleaned before we use them. So today I came with the topic like data exploration. So data exploration is nothing but it contains of it is like cleaning the data so that if you give some better inputs, the model will perform well and which will give the better output. So the output is based upon our input. So our input must be very clear, like it must be in very structured way so that the output will be much more better. So as you know, there are uh, two topics like outliers and missing values as well. So you know these two are the things which we have to do. That is like pre-processing the data before we even build a model or train a model. So apart from these, there are also we need to learn some basics. Like there are three more important analysis. That is data exploratory analysis contains of three topics like uh, univariate analysis, uh, bivariate analysis, and multivariate analysis. So you may have you are familiar or you may or may not be familiar with these terms, but let me explain from the scratch. Coming to the univariate analysis, it is like having only one variable, that is only one dimension. You may or may not aware of terms like categorical or continuous, quantitative or qualitative. So what are these terms mean? Quantitative means which can be quantified in terms of numbers, which can be quantified on a measure of scale. So these are those generally are our weight, our age, our height, uh, marks. These are quantitative variables, whereas coming to qualitative variables which cannot be quantified. So what are the terms which can't be quantified are all those terms are called as quantitative terms, sorry, quantitative variables. So these can be like beauty, gender, uh, or you can say like performance, attitude. So these can't be quantified at the first instinct. These are generally qualitative variables which we can convert into quantitative variables for our analysis purpose. So generally these are qualitative. So the system cannot understand the qualitative directly. So we need to convert the qualitative variables into the quantitative variables. So if all the variables are quantified, then the system can recognize and calculate upon that basis. So later we can again reconvert the quantified variables which we have converted earlier back to normal so that we can get the better result. Suppose generally if you have collected some questionnaire of data with Likert scale of 5 points, you will be having some 5 points like very good, good, neutral, bad, very bad. So let us suppose these are the 5 points. The system cannot understand, oh, this is very bad, this is very good, good, neutral. So we need to scale the terms on the Likert scale, like very bad comes to 1, bad comes to 2, neutral 3, good 4, very good 5. So based upon this, we are quantifying the categorical variables so that uh, if we add up like sum up them, suppose uh, a query like a person have filled the questionnaire, so his total score is 40. Let us suppose his total score is 40 and some another person, that is person 2, have filled the same query and his score is like 50. So we can say that the second person is much more satisfied or his weightage is more than the first person. So this feels like second person is more loyal or much have gave is very much satisfied with our products or service. So we can quantify like that and can come towards a conclusion. So just this is an example. So generally there will be of qualitative or quantitative data. So let us understand with the simple data set like iris, which we have seen earlier. So you know the commands like import numpy as np, pandas as pd, cborn as sns. So we have loaded the libraries. So let's go with importing iris dataset. So here is our iris dataset. So among all of these, you can see the data types of these variables. Sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal widths are quantitative variables, so which are represented in number and are quantified. So you can see like the decimal number is represented as a float. So all the 4 variables you can see as float variables. Coming to Setosa species, there are 3 categories like Setosa, Virginica, and also uh, another one. So there are 3 species which are qualitative in nature. So the object is stored as the variable is data type is object. In Python, every variable is generally treated as an object until unless we have specified it. Here the numerical data will be treated as int or float as it doesn't contain any decimal values. It will take it as integer. If it contain any decimal values, it will consider as float. You may or may not aware of terms of discrete and continuous data. So for your understanding, I can say like discrete data can be of a number without any decimals. So that let us say 1, 5, 10, some 100. So all these numbers are discrete in nature. So there are no decimal values. Coming to continuous variables, there will be of infinite numbers from one number to another number. Let's say 1 is a discrete number, 2 is another discrete number. if they are continuous, let us say 1.0, 2.0. Between 1.0 and 2.0, there are unlimited numbers. That is 1.1, 1.11, 1.111. There will be infinite of numbers present in between. So the range between any two numbers will be infinite, so they are continuous in nature. So we can term those as without any decimals, the number can be said as discrete, and with decimals any number can be said as continuous. You can verify with anything. Here the all the for your another understanding, we can say all the float variables can be of continuous, all the integer variables can be of discrete. Just as simple as that. Uh, that's it. These are the basic terms like qualitative, quantitative, categorical, discrete, or continuous. So qualitative categorical is nothing but divide which are having different categories. Here species has having three categories like there are three categories in species law. So the species variable can be said as a categorical variable, which can be divided into three. So if we consider gender, we are having male or female. So we can specify that gender is a categorical variable which is having two classes, that is male category and female category. Like that, anything which can be grouped among them can be set as categorical variable. So coming back to our topic, univariate analysis is like talking about one variable. So let us consider a variable like sepal length. So sepal length, if we consider sepal length, this is it will come under the univariate analysis as we are considering only one variable that is having only one dimension. If you are going to consider two variables, that is like sepal length and sepal width, uh, then this will be of two two types, like two variables. So it will be of bivariate analysis. Taking these two and performing some analysis, you may perform anything like going to regression, or you are going to plot some scatter plot between these two, or some time series analysis. Anything can be done. So considering two variables, so that uh, the data will be converted into two dimensions. So it can be it can be of two dimensions. So it can be called as bivariate analysis. And having more than two variables like three or four variables can be called as multivariate analysis. So if we consider all the four variables here, so we can, if you perform any analysis, so like plotting a correlation matrix between all these four can be of multivariate analysis. So like drawing a tree map can be of such example. For sample purpose, I can show you like SNS dot box plot of iris dot sepal. So you can see the box plot of sepal length. Let me draw from sepal width. So you can see the box plot for the sepal width here. So box plot is a data visualization technique used for univariate analysis. Apart from box plot, you can use many other like scatter plot, swarm plot, violin plot, also line chart. So all these terms can be all these types of visualizations can be come under the univariate analysis. So for your for a sample, I have drawn the box plot. If you want many other, you can import them from matplot library. So this is the library which we generally use for visualization purpose. Matplotlib.py plot. Matplot library is like matrix plotting library where most of the Python plots are present. It is known for the plotting. So plotting can be done like loading the PLT and same as box plot. So the same can be visualized here. This is the same as the blocks plot the like format. The round shapes, that is the circles, are identified as outliers. The least point can be termed as the minimum range. This can be quartile 1, this can be the median, this is the quartile 3, and this can be the maximum. These are the outliers like 1, 2, 3, 4. The circles may represent the presence of an outlier, but doesn't quantify like having one circle is like having a one outlier at that instinct. It doesn't mean that. Maybe there are two outliers at that instinct, but it can be represented as only one. Like that, similarly, as similar to that, like plotting plt dot plot of some same like iris dot sepal length can be, this can be a univariate graph which can be used to identify the trends. So all these dimensions can be all these categories. You can load any another variable. Like let's take the same variable. Like hist. If you replace with hist, it will become the histogram. So there will be of n number of plots in univariate analysis. Generally, we use the scatter plot is the most thing we use generally. So I don't know. So this can be of the scatter plot with we drawn for index is nothing but the index column, that is 0, 1, 2, 3 row number wise. So it doesn't it is not considered as a variable. So let us say it's plot under the sepal length only. So if we specify that draw between the sepal length and sepal width, it will become the bivariate analysis. As well as coming to histogram also, taking two variables cannot be a bivariate. Like histogram is not suitable for the bivariate mostly. So we're taking the two variables on the line graph, like x equal to sepal length and y equal to sepal width can be like a bivariate analysis for line chart, as well as box plot can be termed like side by side box plot will be like various box plots will be plotted for each individual variable. If we got box plot for sepal width here, the other box plot for sepal length can be also be drawn. Sorry, I'm not aware of it. I will definitely discuss this later. So moving on, like univariate analysis, like taking one variable, and bivariate analysis, like considering two variables, and multivariate analysis is like considering more than two variables and doing some analysis. These are generally used for knowing the data, and for also there will be the main two terms that are to be verified across every data is like finding the outliers as well as the missing values. So you can see like we can find out iris is having some outliers in the sepal width variable, so these are need to be treated out with the median imputation, as well as coming to the missing values you can identify them like using you can rectify them with the mean imputation. So let us discuss in general with the missing values. So coming to the missing values can be find out using can be treated with four in general. Let's take an example so that you can easily understand. So here I did nothing but creating a column, like column one is a list of having some values. Here np.nan is nothing but a missing value. Np is numpy which we have imported previously. So np.nan creates a missing value here. So and going on to the second variable, we had a missing value here also. I created a df equal to data frame with an empty data frame. PD is nothing but pandas. We imported pandas as PD. So PD dot data frame. Here D capital and F capital need to be represented for sure. So PD dot data frame creates. So this commands creates an empty data frame where we can load the data frames as df of column 1. That is in df the column 1 must be this is my creation, like my specific example. Let's say C1. If you want, this can be told as C2 for the column 2. So let me run it. So let us view the data frame. So data frame of head of up to 10 variables, so that you can generally see. Let me run it again. So you can see now the data frame dot head is having 10 variables, that is 10 rows of data. Having in the first column we are having a missing value at the 5th row, and in the second column we are having the missing value at the first row itself. So let us check whether these are treated as a missing values or not. You know the command which we have discussed in the previous class, that is df dot nma of, that is a null value or not. We are going to check. So is na dot sum of. So it is saying that column 1 is having one missing value, column 2 is having one missing value. So it is clear that we are having a missing value, so we need to treat these. There are, in general, there can be this can be said as there are 4 techniques that can be used to remove the missing values. So one is like deleting the row, total row. So suppose if we say here is a missing value, so what if this entire row is deleted? And again coming to here, deleting this entire row, we are having at least only 10 column, 10 rows. Out of them, which in which 2 rows are deleted, the data may be varied. So the deletion of rows is not a good idea. Like we can't say it is bad, but we can say if the data present in that row is having more missing values, so we can obviously delete that row itself. Having more than like 60% or 70% of missing values, we can obviously delete that row. And if we go if we delete column wise, so if we consider this column is having a missing value, shall we remove this column? No, because having a one missing value, deleting the column itself is like missing out a variable itself. You know how the dependent variable is and the independent variables are correlated with each other. So in regression you can find out like how much the dependent variable is based on the independent variable, how much well it is affected. So all these terms will be need to be considered. So coming to the row wise deletion, we can delete the row if the row is having more than some 60% or 70% of missing values, so that we can remove the row, unless until we need to treat the missing values in another format. The missing values can be created like due to users response, based upon the user response, like maybe the user have forgotten to fill the value, or they may be removed by particularly, or created by some errors. So these all can be of the reasons for creating of missing value. My suggestion is, and the best proven method is to treat the missing values with imputation, mean imputation. We will treat like, let us suppose we remove these values, so that all the mean is calculated among all these values. Let us suppose take the column 1. If we take the missing value, all the rest of the variables are considered, and the mean is considered calculated for the column 1, so that uh, a mean value appears. That mean value will be replaced in the place of NaN, that is the missing value. So let us suppose the mean value of the first column is adding 0.3 plus 0.49 plus and so on by like 9 variables by 9. So that the mean value, let us suppose 0.5. So the 0.5 will be placed in the place of NaN, so that there will be no missing value, and the cell will be filled with the mean value. That is how the mean imputation is done, and this is a proven method which gives the accurate results and the better which will develop the model better way, so that we choose the mean imputation. So let's get started with the mean imputation, how it is need to be done in the Python. So moving on, we can treat it like we need to import the sklearn library with impute package. So sklearn.impute, in sklearn.impute we have, so from sklearn.impute we can import simple imputer. So we have successfully imported the function like simple imputer. Simple imputer is the function which is present in sklearn. In sklearn, there is a module like impute. In impute, there is a function like simple imputer. Simple imputer is a function used to treat the missing values with them either by mean imputation or median imputation. That is up to your extent, but among all those, I suggest the mean imputation. Mean imputation is the better for missing values, and median imputation is better for outlier. So I will show you an example of treating the mean imputation for the missing values. The similar will be the median imputation for the outliers also. So let's get started with this. So let us say that df underscore imputed will be like imputed data frame. For that, simple imputer of missing values equal to np.nan. That is our it is nothing but our null value in the numpy array, which is created in the numpy array, and also the strategy can be of mean. If we if we want to do the mean imputation, we need to mention here as a mean. If you want to do as median imputation, you can mention as median. There is nothing wrong in doing that. We can do mean imputation as well as median imputation. I choose the mean imputation is the best for the missing values. For if you want to do as a median, you can obviously do that. There is no wrong in doing the mediation imputation. So I created the mean imputation. So the mean imputation is created here. So df underscore imputed is the fit function in which our model, let's say like df underscore imputed is the model we created, which has the mean imputation predefined in it. So we need to convert the data which we have, that is like this data which is having two missing values, one in column 1, one in column 2, is to be mean imputed. So we need to transform the data. So for that purpose, we need to load the function that is df underscore imputed dot transform, and we just need to enter df. That is our previous data which we have stored. So which will convert them into 1 second. So before transforming, we need to fit a function. After framing a model, we need to fit the model so that the model will be fitted into a function like we need to fit a model so that the model will be created. So here df underscore imputed dot fit gives like the model is fitted into the simple imputer, that is our mean imputation function. Then we can create like df underscore imputed dot transform, in which we can enter the df. So here our df variable is created. For your visualization purpose, I will again recode this in the print function so that you can visualize easily. So here is our output, where previously in column 2 you are having a missing value here. Here the missing value is replaced with the mean value, that is 0.49273333 and so on. This is the mean value for all these values, for all the rest of the values in column 2, so that the value is removed, the missing value is removed and replaced with the mean value. Coming to the first column, we have in fifth row here. So here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here 0.4866 is the mean value for the first column, which is replaced, so that finally you can see as, let us say data 1 equal to this. So data 1 dot is na dot sum. Let's check it now. Sorry. This is created in an object, so that let me create this is to be converted into a data frame so that the analysis can be done. So you can see all the values are false. We are asking like, is there any missing value? So they all are saying as false. So similarly, so in 0th column there is no here. These represents the columns and this represents the total sum values. In 0th column, that is this value, we can rename the columns. For as of now, I am saying in the first column we have no missing values. In the second column also we have no missing values. So it is clear that we have treated the missing values with the mean imputation. Similarly, the outliers can be treated with the median imputation, so that all the outputs, let us say the sepal width is having these outliers, all the outliers will be removed and fall into the interquartile range, that is this box here. This is the Q3 and this is the Q1. These Q3 minus Q1, that range from Q1 to Q3 can be said as interquartile range. If we treat with the mediation analysis, the missing values, the outliers will be removed and will be scaled into this median, near the median. So this is the mediation analysis. This is how the pre-processing of data, that is data exploration, is to be done. How well you understand the data is that much better you can predict the values. You may or may not know what algorithm you need to use, but that is like collecting the data, creating the data in a structured manner, and managing the outliers, missing values, and knowing the variables, what are the variable types in your data. All among your project, 70% of the work is done with the creation of a structured data itself. So 70% of your entire work lies with the handling of data. So this is how we need to handle a data, so that rest of the things, like just you will import some function from a package which are predefined mostly, so that you use, you fit a you build a model, you fit a function, you will transform or visualize. Everything is done easily later. All the thing that is to be done is with handling of data. So this is how the data is to be handled and visualized. Knowing some basic functions like mat from the Seaborn package as well as matplotlib.py plot. Here, these are the two main packages which are used to visualize the data. So you can refer the internet so that you can identify different plots for both for all the univariate, bivariate, and multivariate analysis. This is the brief introduction about the data exploratory analysis. So if you are having any doubts, you can ask me now. So there are no doubts. Can we close the session? Okay, then let us close the session. Have a good day. Bye.